I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. Happy New Year! It's 2017. We took a week break over the holidays, but we're back and we have a lot of exciting things in store for 2017 with the Why Not Now show. So look forward to some big guests, some unexpected guests, some changes and shifts slightly in the format, and all around just continue to grow and have fun. Today I have a unique compilation of guests on the show for you. I went through and picked out some of my favorite Why Not Now moments. We have Mark Cuban, who you may know from Shark Tank or as the Dallas Mavericks NBA team owner, and maybe even just as the controversial commentator at times. We also have Scott Harrison, who is the founder of Charity Water, which has raised more than $200 million over the years. He has such an interesting story. And Troy Aikman, who you may have heard of. He's a 3-time Super Bowl champion and amazing guy all around. So what I did is I went through and just took a few of my favorite tidbits. And if you're thinking about New Year's resolutions, if you're thinking about ways to just kind of enhance, improve your world, hopefully this will help you. It'll jumpstart or just give you kind of that motivation and inspiration you need. This year, I'm all about momentum and gaining momentum. So here you go. Here's Mark, Scott, and Troy. Before we hop into this episode, let me fill you in on a little secret of mine. That's Headspace. It's a guided meditation app, and I never imagined that doing something for 10 minutes a day could increase my quality of life so much. I've always struggled with knowing when to make things happen versus when to let things happen. Sometimes things go very well when I push on the gas, and sometimes not so much. It gets me into trouble. Headspace has helped me with learning how to trust my intuition. And I've tried meditation off and on for years. It's never stuck, but this time it has. I've made a very intentional shift in my morning routine, and that's to wake up, have my coffee, do Headspace, journal, and then I check my email, my social media, all of my devices. It's been a big shift, but great result. My aunt used to say, don't let anything rent space in your head for free. That's valuable real estate. Headspace allows me to be a much better landlord of my thoughts, especially first thing in the morning. You can go to headspace.com/why not now for a free trial. And if you stick around to the end of the show, I'll tell you how you can get a month for free. One of the themes within these conversations that you're about to listen to is money and how money comes into the equation of answering the why not now question. And I hear this a lot when people say, I just don't have enough money to get started, or I can't quit my job right now because I can't afford to, rightfully so. And these individuals have had interesting takes on how to deal with that. So you might want to listen carefully to those points because it's something we all deal with. And that financial component into this equation is relative in any why not now decision-making process. And so take a listen, especially to that portion, because I think sometimes that's our biggest hurdle, but also sometimes it can be an excuse that we just kind of fall back on and not really think through of how we can get through that challenge. So here you go, starting off with Mark Cuban. Can you share a time or think of a time when you had a big decision to make and you said to yourself, why not now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's when I got fired from one of my first jobs. I was working in Dallas as a software salesperson, and one of my responsibilities, it was a retail software store, was to come in and sweep the floor, wipe down the windows, and open the store. And I closed a big deal, and the customer wanted me to come pick up the check. And I checked with my boss. He was like, "No, you need to open up the store." And I'm like, "That's crazy." So I defied him, figuring that when I handed him a $15,000 check, which was a $1,500 commission for me, he'd come around and say, "Okay, you did the right thing." Nope, fired me on the spot. Obviously didn't give him the check. I took it back. But then it was the decision: do I get another job, or do I, take that customer and another customer and go start off on my own? And why not now? So I started on my own, and the rest is history.
And when you were making that decision, what was going through your mind? I mean, you not only made the decision to go pick up the check, but then also, take your own path.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was broke as a joke, man. It was like I couldn't get any poorer. So, I was living 6 guys in a 3-bedroom apartment, sleeping on the floor, and so it was like I had nothing to lose. So why not now? And so that really was my logic. It was like I just got to go for it because I'm not a very good employee. I don't want to look for another job. I think I could do this, and so why not now?
And has that shifted over the years, over time?
Yeah, I'm not quite as broke.
Yeah, well, of course you're not as broke, but with the nothing to lose, I'd say you might have.
Yeah, it's a little bit different now, obviously, but it went from nothing to lose financially or personally, that type of stuff, to I've got stuff to lose, but my attitude now is if I'm prepared, if I did all the work, when I walk in the room, if I know my business and the industry better than anybody else in the room, why not now, right? Why not go for it? It's now more a matter of preparation rather than lack of anything to lose.
I love it. Actually,
More of a blast.
There you go. So changing gears to the topic of time for a moment. The simplification of life is going to continue, and tech helps us create that path of least resistance to accomplish things. And I've heard you say we're reaching a point where everyone is in the business of selling their time.
Right.
You seem to have a very unique view on time and how you spend your time. And you've said you viewed your first few jobs as kind of getting paid to learn experiences. And you have this knowledge advantage theory. I've heard that you read up to 3 hours a day. Is that true?
Oh, yeah, at least. Absolutely. Like now the book in front of me is called The Master Algorithm, How the Quest for the Ultimate Learning Machine Will Remake Our World. Because I need to know, how important machine learning is going to be, how it's going to happen, and how it's going to change what we do, how algorithms that learn and create new algorithms are going to automate automation. And so that's going to impact, all thought processes, maybe not this year, maybe not 5 years, but within 10 years. And so, it all goes to the heart of how much can I learn and how can I get smarter and give myself an advantage.
Love it. And that actually gets into quite a few questions that I have in a minute or two. But when it comes to reading, have you ever taken a speed reading class or anything like that?
I thought about the old school Evelyn Wood, but now, I'm not a good reader necessarily. It's not like I'm trying to, I'm not trying to set a record for how many books I read or things that I do, stuff like that. It's just sometimes I can rush through a book and I might not finish it because I think I got all I need out of it. Other times, it'll take me a long time, and other times, it's an overnight read and I stay up till I'm done. It just depends on the book and what I think I need to get out of it. I'm more reading to what can I learn and how does that fit in, the big picture for me.
And is it mainly books versus articles?
No, I do both. More often I'm reading something on the web, or I'm reading an article, or I'm reading a blog, or listening to something, and they mention a book that they thought was interesting or informative, and then I'll click through to it, read the review, and if I think it's something that will help me, I'll buy it and read it. The way I look at it, the marginal cost for a book is nothing compared to the value of what it can bring me if it really helps me add value.
And how do you keep, I guess, one, you are the quickest to respond on email, on Cyberdust. It's lightning fast. I can't even get interns to respond that quickly. Given how busy you are, how do you manage communication like that, or just your
I don't do
time?
phone calls. I don't do phone calls, and I don't do meetings unless I'm getting paid to do the meeting or someone's writing me a check where I have no choice. So
Okay.
the number of calls I'll do in a day is typically zero. The number of meetings I'll do in a day is typically zero. And so so that pushes everything to email or cyber dust, or texting. And so that's how I'm monitoring everything that's going on in my life. And so that's why I can respond so quickly
Interesting. That's very fascinating.
in my decision-making process.
And when it comes to negotiating, what do you have a number one tip other than work hard and
To be
knock on
fair,
a
I
lot
try
of
to be
doors?
fair. I
Yeah.
try to be fair because, you know, going way back when, it was like, you know what, I plan on being in business for a long, long time. And when you do fair deals, where both parties weren't quite 100% happy, but they feel good about what's happened, then, you tend to do more business over time and you tend to have better networking connections. And particularly now, right? Back in the day, people worked at companies forever and they had careers there. Now everybody's a free agent. And so if you're not fair in your negotiating tactics, if you're not nice, the value of nice is way undervalued right now. Whether it's negotiating, whether it's treating people, whether it's treating customers, nice is one of the most valuable assets that any company or individual has. And in a world, particularly for millennials, where you're going to be a free agent every couple of years, then when people think you're nice and they like working with you, your value proposition goes through the roof, and there's so much more you can accomplish. So, I'd modify anybody's negotiating right now, to always include nice.
That's a great segue.
Absolutely. I love Pittsburgh, but yeah, I don't see it happening.
Well, last why not now question. So I like to kind of bookend the show with a future why not now. So is there something you've been considering doing that you haven't done? Maybe it's time to get your why not now on, something that maybe people aren't very familiar with?
Yeah, I got to go take Pilates. I got to improve my core. And so I keep on saying, why not now? I got to really work on my core. Seriously.
So you're serious about this one, right? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I took one Pilates class last year, and I was sore for a week because I never did it again. And so I keep on saying, I got to do it. I got to do it because I got to work on my core, and all I've been doing is cardio. So yeah, that's my why not now right now. So the world is going to change when Mark starts Pilates.
So every Pilates instructor in Dallas is going to be tweeting you and
That's fine. I'm good with that.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Anything business-wise?
No, I mean, why not now? I guess is I mentioned I'm reading the book on the master algorithm, and I definitely want to start getting into understanding and learning how to use different machine learning libraries and databases and different data inputs, so I can have a better understanding, so that when I walk into a room, I'm at least competent, and then hopefully at some point I can, be the guy who knows more.
And as it relates to Twitter, if you were the CEO today, what would be the first change you'd make at Twitter?
What I learned from Cyberdust, right? In Cyberdust, there's no trolls because nobody sees your response except for the person that you message. And so in Twitter, I would make an option of responses, not the tweet itself, but just put a button there that says responses public or private. And that way, if I'm worried about trolls, if I just set the responses to private and only I can see them, all trolls go away.
That's interesting, actually. And what keeps you up at night? Anything?
My kids' health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
The Mavs.
The Mavs. And final question here. What advice would you give to your younger self?
I hate that question. I always hate that question.
Why?
I just think because in my case, no, it's not that. In my case, my only advice would be don't change a fucking thing.
Just so there's no advice that you're holding out on to give your
maybe
kids?
Don't drink as much. Don't drink as much. But no, because it worked out. Look, I love my life. I say it all the time. I'm probably the luckiest guy in the world, and knock on wood, that doesn't change. But it's just. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't change a thing. The good, the bad, the ugly. It all, all things I learned from, and all gave me the chance to say, why not now?
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for your time, Mark. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Ava. I really appreciate it. Congrats on the podcast.
And here are a few select moments from my conversation with Scott Harrison, Charity Water founder. professional why notter. So let's dive right in. Let's go back to kind of that moment when you had to ask yourself, why not now? You wanted to make this pretty big change. And what caused you to ask yourself that? But also, let's talk through the steps of what you did, the very first step.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess to get to that, I need to back up a little bit. So I grew up in a very conservative Christian home. My mom had become very ill when I was 4 years old, so she was an invalid, and I grew up as an only child. Really, helping to take care of mom, playing by all the rules, playing piano in the church. Just a really good kid, but also a slightly traumatic childhood that was just. My mom's illness was so bizarre and so traumatic. So at 18 years old, I kind of act out this classic rebellion story. I moved to New York City. I join a band. I start drinking and smoking and doing drugs and chasing girls. And I become a nightclub promoter. So I figured if you were going to rebel, you should rebel in style. And I couldn't believe that there was this job where you could actually get paid to drink for free. And from 18 to 28, the next decade was just a hedonistic, selfish, sycophantic time for me, selling $500 bottles of champagne to, bankers and, just really living an excessive, destructive life, at least one that had compromised the spirituality and the morality of my past. And I got to a point at 28 years old where I was on a vacation in South America. We'd gone to Punta del Este in Uruguay, and I was with the beautiful people, and there was this amazing compound we were staying at, and there was a staff waiting on us, and there were horses in the backyard, and we'd spent $1,000 blowing up fireworks and magnums of Dom Perignon, and you can kind of imagine all of the things that might say to someone, you've arrived, you should be happy. Mm-hmm. And I realized it was almost like that game Musical Chairs, where the music stops and there was nowhere for me to sit. And in some ways, it was just this cathartic moment where I realized that there would never be enough. I'd been looking for happiness, for satisfaction in all the wrong places. And there'd never be enough parties. There'd never be enough girls. Or someone would always have a nicer watch or a nicer car or a nicer apartment. And if I continued in this path of nightlife, the legacy I was leaving was just simply getting people drunk, getting them wasted for a living. And maybe I'd get 1 million or 2 million or 5 million people drunk over the course of my life. But I think I wanted my life to stand for something a little different. So, I have a pretty, faith is really an important part of my story and my journey. So I begin kind of trying to find my way back to a very lost Christian faith, a very lost morality. And I think opting back into that as an adult was really powerful for me. So I had come across this verse that said, true religion is to look after widows and orphans in their distress and to keep from being polluted by the world. Well, I felt like I was 0 for 2. I had done nothing for the poor in 10 years. And not only was I one of the most polluted people I knew, I actually polluted others with my life and with my parties. So I come back to New York. I'm struggling with what next. I didn't want to throw parties in nightclubs anymore. And I don't know, it was kind of a wrestling of the soul. And it wasn't... it took me about 6 months from that vacation to find a way out. And there was a moment where I rented this cobalt blue Ford Mustang from Newark Airport. I think it was an unlimited rental. I had no idea where I was going. And I just started driving north. And I grabbed the Bible, I grabbed a bottle of Dewar's, and just started heading up through Connecticut and Vermont, really trying to pray, trying to figure out what the opposite of my life might look like, how I might be able to make a radical change and kind of find my way back home to the things I thought was important. So I wind up in, and this is maybe the how, I wind up in Moosehead Lake in Maine. I mean, we're talking in the middle of the state. I'm at an internet cafe in Greenville that is a dial-up internet cafe. And I start dial-up. I mean, I won't make the sound because it's painful, but everybody has horrible memories of that sound. I begin to apply to volunteer for humanitarian organizations. So, Save the Children or UNICEF or the Peace Corps, these organizations that one might have heard of. And it was a really simple idea. I would give one of the 10 years that I had selfishly wasted. And in service to the poor, I would try to clean up my life and clean up my act and see where that took me. And one of the frustrating things was no one would take me. So I'm denied by all these organizations because, of course, they are very serious, credible people. And I am something they've never even heard of before, which is a nightclub promoter. And it's not a necessarily transferable skill from getting 1,000 people inside a club past the velvet rope to serious humanitarian work in South Sudan. So I'm really frustrated because my heart is now wanting to serve. I've literally put miles between my destructive kind of lifestyle in New York. I'm in nature in Maine, and no one will take me. So I'm very fortunate. One organization finally writes me back and says if I was willing to pay them $500 a month and I was willing to go live in post-war Liberia. Now, this is a country I never even heard of in West Africa, that I could volunteer. And that's really where everything started for me. I dusted off a journalism degree that I'd gotten at NYU and never used and said to this organization, look, I actually probably can be of service to you because I have 15,000 people on my club list. I've been getting people drunk for 15 years or for 10 years. What if I were to tell them a new story? What if I was able to highlight the amazing humanitarian work that I'm sure you're going to be doing in Liberia? And it happened very quickly after that. I sold almost everything I owned. I remember putting up over 1,000 DVDs in a lot on eBay. I just liquidated my life and joined this amazing hospital ship, a humanitarian mission in post-war Liberia at 28 years old.
Wow. And you took your doors and your Bible and you hit the road. I just think it's such a visual. And when you say you liquidated your life and some of those moments, you needed some money. Well, did you need money? I did need money. I mean, nightclub promoters make great money, but we spend everything we own. I mean, it's and you're flying on other people's private planes, and we were never the ones paying the dinner bill, right? It's kind of a system of everybody else's money. So, I did need the money to go and serve. And while I was doing great, we weren't exactly saving up. Sure. And I think that's a common thing with when people are facing that why not now question. It's so easy to have financials be our excuse, and a legitimate excuse, but getting creative how to work through them, selling things on eBay. I guess it comes down to, would you say, how bad do you want it? What do you think?
I think so, or how important security and money really is. I think, look, I was also fortunate. I was born in a very middle-class family. My parents don't make much money, but also I knew I was always going to have a roof over my head, right? So if this didn't work out, right, I could always go sleep in the basement or, in the spare room at my parents'. So, and I know a lot of people don't have that luxury. Now, it did work out for me. So I wound up paying for myself for a while. And then I actually wound up raising support from other friends. So, this humanitarian mission, it's a really interesting business model. The way that they help subsidize the programs is they turn their volunteers into fundraisers. So there were 350 people, doctors, surgeons, nurses, support staff on this giant hospital ship. And everybody was raising about $500 a month for crew fees. Mm-hmm. Some people paying it themselves, some raising it for others. So it was partly my money. And then I actually went to guys that were buying bottles and said, hey, do you want to help support me for a month? So it was, there was a little bit of humility.
But also really leveraging and using that.
So I mean, I don't even remember some of this. So what would the advice be? I mean, for me, it was very much a kind of deep, soulful reconnection to faith. If and I know people listening would have many different faith stories, and I'm sure probably the majority none at all. I think for me, it's about out of that context, it's about not being selfish. I mean, my entire life was designed to make me happy, and that doesn't make you happy when all you're trying to do is serve yourself. There's actually almost an entrapment in that. I found that, I kind of tried to position God first and then others, second, right? What would my relationship with God be? And then what could it look like to the poor? And I found a real freedom in escaping kind of that selfish trap and escaping. And the more time I spent thinking about others, the more I wanted to help others, and almost the more free I became. So I think sometimes in relationships, you'll see a husband and a wife, or two people that aren't married, and it's all about them. What they can get out of the relationship, and the minute it's not convenient, they can just walk. And I think the maybe a more beautiful picture of marriage is two people that are laying down their life for each other. That you are really waking up every day trying to meet the needs of your partner, or of others. So for me, just changing that positional approach. I mean, it's 180-degree opposite, and then you find yourself much happier. You find yourself kind of free.
And last but not least, I went through my conversation with Troy Aikman and picked out a few of my favorite points. Here's Troy.
Let's get to our first question. There's no doubt about it. You are a professional why notter, in my opinion, and many others. So tell us about a time when you had been thinking about doing something for a long time, and then finally you thought to yourself, why not now?
Yeah, I think for me, Amy, it really it came about. There's been certainly change in my life. From when I was young and at different times. But I think the moment you reference really kind of happened for me when I was a sophomore in college, and I was at the University of Oklahoma. I had been starting that season as a sophomore, and then broke my leg, and the team went on without me to win the national championship, and it was pretty obvious that I was not going to get a chance to play if I stayed at Oklahoma. And so I was really kind of forced with a decision as to whether or not I wanted to leave kind of the comforts of a university where I felt at home, and then within my state where it was an hour and a half drive to my hometown. But yet I knew that for me to ultimately be able to go on and achieve what my dreams were, and that was to be a professional athlete, that I was really kind of left with, not much of a decision if I wanted to fulfill those things. And so, it kind of was 19 years old at the time, and I had to just pretty much take a leap of faith as far as, where I was going to go, what all that entailed. I had to leave the state, because of transfer rules, and for me to be able to still go on and play at a Division I school. And so that was a difficult time for me. In terms of being young and leaving family, and kind of at that time, Amy, no transfer students had really ever emerged after transferring. Different athletes from time to time would leave. It's not as prevalent as it is today in college athletics, but athletes would transfer and then you just never would hear from them again. So, there was a lot of doubt, but yet I felt like I kind of needed to take those steps if ultimately I was going to fulfill, my childhood dreams.
Were you an advice seeker at the time, let alone at that age? I've heard an interview where you were talking about a time where I think, I'm not sure which daughter it was, but they said to you, you know what, Dad, I'm not going to go pro. I don't want to go pro. And I'm not sure if it was I don't want or what the story was, but can you talk a little bit about that and your reaction? Because I thought that was really cool how this all went down.
Yeah, it was my oldest daughter, Jordan, and both of my girls are good athletes, and a lot of things happen naturally for them. And they've been good players on their teams. And so we were on a walk a few summers back. We were walking through the neighborhood, and we were talking about a lot of things, and I was in one of those moods, and I was on them about different things that I felt like they could improve, and I told my oldest daughter, and I said, and by the way, I heard the coach talking the other day about lacrosse, and you're supposed to be practicing, doing so many throws a day and doing this, doing that, and I haven't seen you do any of it. And then I just felt this gap from when I was walking and there was no one else really behind me. So I stopped, and my both daughters kind of stopped, and Jordan had her head down. And so I walked back, and she looked at me and just said, Dad, I'm not going to be a professional athlete. And I remember, her saying that, and it really impacted me because, I would never want either one of my girls to think that I have expectations for them that are that high. I want them to be what they want to be and who they want to be and live their life. But I said to her, darling, I don't think you'll ever be a professional athlete either. I mean, and it's not because I don't think that she has ability to do really great things. It's just that the odds of that happening, aren't obviously real high. And if it's not what she wants to do, that's fine. And I said, but you're going to be something. You're going to, in life, you're going to be something. If it's not a professional athlete, it's going to be being a doctor or being a nurse or being a school teacher or being a housewife or being a mom or all those, I guess, roles that we find ourselves in. And I just said that whatever that is for you, I think you should want to be the best at it. And so if you're going to play lacrosse, I think you should try to be the best that you can be. And I think nothing happens by just happenstance. I think you have to put effort into it. And I don't know if that was an impactful moment for her. I felt it was kind of a teaching moment. I've told the story a few times. She maybe had even forgotten about it, but she's heard about it now. But I do think it's a lesson that is important for all of us to remember that whatever it is you do, I think it's your signature, it's your autograph that you put on your work. And to me anyway, you should take pride in everything and anything that you do.
Yeah, I think that's a question for you. Something that I've really struggled with in life, and one of my biggest challenges has been kind of learning when to make things happen versus when to let them happen. And sometimes that sheer force of will can get you to great places, and sometimes it's gotten me into some trouble. So given what you've accomplished, you are very well aware of what you're capable of. Do you have any ways that you decipher between those two of when to let things happen, when to make them happen? Any advice on that?
I think that's such a great question. I think I wrestle with that a lot, because I'm not an overly patient person. I tend to want things to happen very quickly. And even in business, if somebody comes to me and has a great idea and I like it, I kind of want things to get done immediately. The one and saying, okay, let's do it. And when are we going to get started? And as you know, I mean, it doesn't always happen that way. And I even think in my personal life, I probably speak for a lot of people who are listening to this, that, we tend to want things to happen, much sooner than they really do. And I began practicing, mindfulness meditation about 3 years ago. And I think it's been really great for me. And it's allowed me to kind of strike a balance, if you will, between being eager for things to occur right away and then just accepting things as they are. And I still am challenged by that notion, but not like I once was. So I really credit, my practice in mindfulness as much as anything. Not that not wanting things to kind of go a little bit quicker is necessarily a bad thing, but I've found real contentment and peace, I guess, in kind of allowing things to happen however they may.
You're jumping to the next question. Great final question. What advice would you give to your younger self?
I probably would be to enjoy the process more, enjoy the day-to-day more. I think that, obviously, as you pointed out earlier, I mean, I had a lot of successes in my career, and not just professionally, but collegiately and then in high school. But I was always very goal-oriented and always had a vision, and like I said, I always wanted to be a professional athlete. So everything I did was geared towards that. And I think that in those moments of real accomplishment and achievement, those were great. But I wish that I had enjoyed the day-to-day grind of it and hadn't have just been always looking so far ahead as to what the result was going to be. And again, going back to what we discussed earlier, I've gotten better at that. I've learned to be better at that through mindfulness meditation. And I would tell my younger self to to dive into that much sooner in his life.
So one of my big why not nows for 2017, and something I've talked a little bit about in the past, is to figure out this whole intuition thing and learn how to kind of have my heart and my head make decisions in concert with one another versus just the logical side of things. And typically I've led with my head and what seems to be the right way to go from a logical standpoint and an analytical standpoint. But my goal is to really get more in touch with my intuition. And it sounds simple, but actually for a long, long time, up until recently, I haven't really ever been able to understand or listen or hear my intuition. So 2017 is all about that. I'm super curious to see what changes will happen in my life if I'm able to accomplish that. Sounds silly, but I think it's time. And so I'll keep you posted on that. So far, meditation, of course, is big. I'm using that as a tool and just trying to journal as usual, but being more intentional, I guess, about not overthinking things, which is kind of counterintuitive. So it's going to be an interesting process. I did hear from many people about their why not nows for 2017, and I'll continue to share them as weeks come and go. And there was one that was super simple that I thought was just worth mentioning. Someone had reached out and said, I really want to start writing more in 2017, and that's her goal. And I said, well, just start by literally blocking time on your calendar and give yourself a buffer between that time. So you have a little bit of time to kind of get your head into it. You can't necessarily go from a meeting or a phone call and hop right into writing sometimes. So she is starting. She's a couple days in, and it's going well. Sometimes I think we overthink things, and you might just need to schedule literally that time to do something. So give that a try. I want to hear what your why not now is. Please share it with me on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at Amy Jo Martin. I'll send a signed copy of my New York Times best-selling book, Renegades Write the Rules, to the first 200 people who listen, rate, and leave an honest review of the podcast in iTunes. And you'll also get a free month subscription from our friends at Headspace. This is only available to Why Not Now listeners. Once you've left a rating and review on iTunes, just email your iTunes handle name and your mailing address to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com, and we'll get your package in the mail to you. For detailed show notes, head to amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. That's where you'll find links to things we discussed on the show, special offers, and how you can keep in touch with guests. Hat tip to my buddies Ash and Devin at Rock Salt Music for our tunes today. You just listened to the talented John Coggins in Let's Go and Let It Ride. And a jump high five to my talented husband, Richard Gruer, for producing the show and being patient with me. See you next time. Until then, why not now?